yeah, I wonder if more people again can take stock from Lewis Capaldi's team
Yeah.
on
And
that.
see how well that's working for everybody involved.
Hey everyone, Nikki here, and welcome to the Riff Yard. We've got a great show today, and I'm joined as ever by the amazing journalist that is Orla Joyce. Orla, how you doing? You good?
I'm good, thank you. All good, all good. How are you?
Excellent. Yeah, not bad. We're both suffering from this amazing, super duper hay fever that's going around. So
Very
um,
lucky.
we're very lucky. So lucky. Thank you, life. Indoors and outdoor life.
My heart goes
Um,
out to anybody else who may be suffering from it. It's tough. You're
it's tough out
warriors.
there. Yeah, just can't do it. Just can't handle it. So I'm really excited about this one because
Me too.
this is again a kind of new discovery for me, even though I'm well aware of the individual. So we're going to talk about the Netflix documentary about Lewis Capaldi and the making of his second record and the whole journey that is that's happened in making it, and it's fascinating.
It
It's
really was.
absolutely fascinating. So much to kind of unpick from it. Um, God, I mean, where do you start with this? Because there's so much in it, and it's not a very long doc either.
Yeah.
Either it's quite short, but I think that kind of adds to the charm of it. So, Ola, what was like your first kind of um, contact with Lewis Capaldi?
Um, so I think like because I've been working in radio for years, it was like he was the new kind of star. Basically, he was being played everywhere, and it wouldn't really be to my taste. But I'd seen him be really funny on Instagram, and I didn't even realize like he talks about that in the documentary how
Yeah,
he's not the comedian from Instagram. He's a
yeah,
singer
I
songwriter.
write songs. Yeah,
Yeah. So I was one of those people. I didn't put two and two together, and I was like, oh, it's that guy. And that was kind of as far as my feelings went for him. Like the music wasn't really my taste, but I respected him as an artist, and that was it. And then kind of in recent years, the more I kind of learn about him, and from watching this documentary, it was fascinating, and I just have an abundance of respect for him now. Like he's incredible and incredibly talented as well. But also, I think it really humanized him. He was already very down to earth and kind of one of the lads and things like that. But the way it showed him interacting with his family, and none of it was very showy. Like it
yeah.
was very parent and child kind of interactions that I thought really brought everything home, which is funny because they're in his home.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean because you think, especially with just the monumental success that he's had,
Mhm.
he's currently on Spotify alone. He's got over 32 million monthly listeners. It's just
Mad numbers.
mad numbers, you know. And someone to kind of he's not hasn't got any arrogance or anything about him, I don't think.
Mm.
And he seems very well planted on the ground, which he
Yeah.
actually talks about in the documentary. How he still lives with his mum and dad
Yeah.
at the time,
Yeah.
and even his mum takes the piss out of him for that, which I think is
Yeah.
really funny. He's like trying to write hit songs like in his pants, eating a sandwich, going, "Oh, mum, have you got any?" Like I think he says like, "I haven't got any pants,
Yeah.
mum." Have you
Yeah.
got? He's like, "I've got a meeting with like the record company in a minute," and it's like tucking into a sandwich and stuff. It's just so like, it's so good, and I'm
Like
so
he's
glad
still just
that's.
a guy. Yeah.
I'm
Just
so
a guy in his
glad.
20s, like.
That's exactly it. I'm so glad that's what he's like.
Yeah.
He's just got that from him, and it's really cool. Um, just seeing him, that there's just no bollocks with him, is there?
Mm,
What you see is what you get, and I think
exactly.
that makes him even more charming.
Mm,
And
definitely.
when you see him switch gears into music mode, when you there's some fantastic parts of him playing guitar, playing piano and tracking vocals in the studio and what have you. It was so good just to see he loves it so much. Like, he's genuine. He's the
Yeah.
real deal. He really is. And echoing what you said at the beginning, it's not my cup of tea genre. Absolutely not. But as a writer and as someone in this crazy music industry, you kind of look at someone like that and you just go, yeah, good on you, man.
Yeah.
And
And
I'll root for you.
exactly. Like I thought, especially when it showed him writing and say dealing with his manager or the label or things like that, that he was so professional. Like, cutting from him just being a guy in his 20s living his life to go, like, switching roles completely, and so, like, no, this is what he wants to do. He knows how to take it seriously, and he knows how to be in control of those aspects, and he stands up for what he wants while also listening to the other professionals in the room. Like, he just seems really mature as well. Like, it's quite inspiring, I'd say.
Yeah, it was. I'm very inspired by watching. I've watched it 3 times.
Wow.
Yeah, just so I could
Pick
really,
up.
yeah, and because of the state that I've been in the last couple of days, and we spoke before coming on air. It was 3 times was probably worth like watching it once for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, just yeah, watching that professionalism and him not being afraid to put his foot down to things, but also as much as he's like, no, that I like my fucking song, thanks very much, type of thing. There was
Yeah.
moments where he was like, I'm not sure. What do you guys think? Can you help?
Yeah.
And I really respected the fact that his he's so comfortable in his own skin of that.
Mm.
Well, to a degree, we'll obviously touch those
Yeah.
bits, but in terms of the creative side,
Yeah.
in
He
those things,
trusts himself.
yeah, that's it. And he's got a good relationship with the people he's worked with, and he believes in what they can do, and they
Yeah.
believe in what he can do, and it's really rare, I think,
Oh, definitely.
see something that is everybody. I mean, there's a few times where there was the manager asking him like, yeah, well, in the studio, like, well, I don't it doesn't sound like a fucking hit to me.
That's it.
And
Yeah.
and I love the fact the producer went, he looked at him and he was like, what the fuck does that mean?
Yeah.
Like, and called him out, called the manager out right in front of everyone. Was like, what the fuck you talking about, mate? What is
Yeah.
that?
And then backtracking to say, oh, it's a great song. It's a really good song. It's just like, well, which is it?
What
Like,
is it, mate?
is
Yeah,
it something that should be scrapped, or is it something that you think needs work? Like,
yeah. It was really interesting to see that kind of, because you'd think as well in those scenarios, someone would be going, yeah, I'm here picking up some. Obviously, the paychecks that must be flowing around this stuff is
yeah.
top. It's the most expensive you're going to get, isn't it? We're talking about one of, well, like there was that call at the beginning of the documentary after he's like, finding a sandwich in his pants,
Yeah.
asking his mum like, what is this? What's going on?
Yeah.
Going off into like a meeting room in the back of his house,
Yeah.
talking to that guy from America, and it's like, oh, it's the was it the slowest climb to a number one in the Billboard history, and
Yeah.
it's sold the most records to get there
Yeah.
ever, and he's just like, oh yeah, cool, like just totally like, yeah, wicked, mate, yeah, cool,
Yeah.
nice one, thanks for your call.
Yeah. Just gonna go finish my lunch.
Yeah, I'm just gonna go and finish my sandwich now. Yeah, so it was really cool to see that, like, none of it's not that it doesn't affect him, but
Mm,
he's just like, yeah, well, that's great. I'm happy for you.
yeah.
I'm happy that you've got that on my artist has got this. And he's like, yeah, cool. I'm just going to keep writing my songs.
Yeah. And that was another thing that again I really respected, was he was very aware of his role as the artist. Like it was his job to write the music, get some feedback from people that he trusted, but then it was like his manager and the other people involved whose job it was to, like, they had a big part to play in its success as well. Like
Yeah.
it wasn't just all on him for it to be a success. It's like, no, you, it's not all me. Like
Yeah,
you
yeah,
have to
because there's
make
that
sure
bit
it
in the
gets to the
car,
right
isn't it?
people.
And he's saying,
Yeah.
"Listen, I'll write the songs, and it's your job to go and make it fucking hit." Yeah,
Yeah.
and I love that.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, that was really cool. It took some turns in it that I
Yeah.
just was not expecting.
And
Um,
because even the fact that it happened, like so there was so much going on with COVID. Like the
yeah,
fact is, for I, in my head he'd been around for a lot longer. And it
yeah,
was only 2019. And then they're saying, oh, 2019 was ages ago. I was like, to me, it doesn't feel like it is, because
yeah,
they basically had 2 years where they couldn't tour properly or anything like that. And he mentions how when he was writing the album, like he's like, what am I writing it for? If I don't know when I'm gonna get to play it. I don't know if I'm going to get to play it live. What's the point kind of thing. So
yeah,
that must have been very difficult.
yeah, absolutely. You can really see the pressure looming on him in
Mm,
those parts, because like we're saying at the beginning, it starts kind of very like, oh look, Lewis is like worth God knows how many millions, probably. He's,
yeah.
arguably the biggest artist in the UK, probably the world, you
Mm,
know, selling out stadiums and records left, right, and center. Um, and then he's like, I haven't done a gig in 18 months, and the record company are telling me that I need to make another a bigger hit record.
yeah.
And you can see him, he's like, I I don't know how to quite do that. I'm just writing songs.
Because, and like when he
Weird.
would have written his first album, obviously he would have written it hoping for success, but he didn't do it knowing, like with the pressures of the second one. And we talked about this with Meteora as well, with Linkin Park,
Yes.
that
Yeah.
when your first album does so well and you were just writing it hoping that someone might listen to it, and then you have this second one with all the pressure and even more, it's just like, oh God. And like he talks about the pressure a lot. And I like, again, a lot of respect and very interesting in terms of how it affected his body as well. I
Oh
think it's a
God.
good lesson for a lot of people that they need to listen to their body and how pressures and anxieties can manifest.
Yeah. Again, that was something that I didn't see coming, because I don't know much about him. Like you said, I'm similar to you. Like I'm aware of who he is as an artist,
Mm,
and I've seen the odd thing of him being fucking hilarious on
yeah.
Instagram. Especially, I don't know if you've seen it when Noel Gallagher said, "Who the fuck is Lewis Capaldi?" And then he was like, "Ooh." And then when he went and played Glastonbury, he came out looking like Noel Gallagher, got his hair cut like him, and wore the same clothes. And I was just like, "Fucking so funny!"
Amazing.
Like took it that far, just
Yeah.
brilliant. You know, um, it's so good. But yeah, when you got down to seeing just how, he was like stress eating,
Mm,
um, just couldn't, he's like physically in pain because he had Tourette's, got diagnosed with Tourette's,
yeah.
um, which is defined as um, an audible tick and a physical tick that operate at the same time.
Yeah.
It's not just a tick, which would be like, I don't know, clearing your throat, or the shoulder shrug thing that he talks about and what he does, but it's
Yeah.
making the noises and stuff at the same time. It's an interesting thing which to learn about in there.
Yeah.
But just seeing how it, like, there was, it was really hard to watch actually.
Mm,
He goes on that, it's like it must be like, I don't know what it was, it must have been like a university masterclass or something like that. And he's just sat there, and he's just like, all over the place.
yeah.
And it sounds like he's, walking while talking, because he's like, out of breath, and like all this, you can just hear it.
Yeah.
And you're just like, Jesus Christ, like it's just out of control. Like the stress
Yeah.
and the anxiety is just beyond
And I can
controllable at this point, it's crazy.
yeah, like I imagine you also get in your head about it as well, like especially when you're in an environment of being interviewed or in front of people where it's like you probably need to try and focus on calming down a bit, but then obviously you're hyper aware of what's going on and you might get a bit self-conscious. I don't know, I'm not going to speak on his behalf,
Mm.
but like it must take such it clearly took a physical toll on him as well because he was in actual pain, but the mental toll of it on top of everything else, like the fact that he kept going, like, and I know he did take a break from writing the album, and fair play to him for that,
Yeah.
but then I think the break was only 4 months or so
Yeah, it
between.
wasn't long, really.
Yeah, I was just like, oh my god, like I can't imagine how you can just bounce back from that.
No. It, it was one thing of that is I did really like how after all of that had happened and they took a break and um came back to it to assess how can they not how could they prevent this.
Mm,
It is really rare to me that people his team don't just care about the money.
mm, yeah,
Obviously of course there's an invested interest in that, of course, but
yeah,
you know they the team that his initial like core team around him really give a shit about him.
yeah,
And when they were like this is just because it wasn't him that asked for it to be stopped.
yeah,
It was his it was his manager and his parents, wasn't it, that said,
yeah,
all right, this just we need to fucking address this because
it's
it's
getting
getting
too bad.
mad. And then they've put things in place for him, like when they were booking that US tour, he's 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off.
That's what it was, yeah.
So they're not just doing the old like 80s 90s thing where they're like, cool, you're on the road for 4 years
Yeah.
and you have 10 days off.
Yeah.
you know like um
Oh
uh
god.
yeah, yeah, so it's nice to see that they had taken, they've really taken his health seriously, and
Yeah.
and they're nurturing it. So it was nice to it's nice to see that it's not all the
He's not just a product to them.
right. Yeah, of course, there's a human there.
Yeah.
um
And that they respect him as an artist as well enough to want to nurture him to get better at both his craft and physically and mentally, that they're not just as like, oh, we'll just let you be a one-hit wonder, or not even a one-hit wonder, but a one-album wonder, and then we're going to head off and find the next one. They're like, no, they trust him, he trusts them. It's nice to see on such a large scale, like, and I'd say like for younger artists as well who might be nervous about entering the music scene, or like just grinding and grinding and grinding and then afraid that they're going to get left behind. Obviously that still can happen,
yeah,
but it does feel like there's a change within the industry, obviously not with every artist, but
no,
the fact that it's happening with somebody as big as Lewis Capaldi, it's good to see.
yeah, that can only inspire better things, couldn't it?
Mm,
I mean, I thought what was also interesting about doing talking about this documentary so quickly after doing the Meteora one is that there is many similarities in the pressure, the mental health,
mm.
the feeling that of you don't fitting in, and all these other things. There's because obviously they're not the same genre, and
Yeah,
there's a 20-year gap between the two.
yeah.
Um, you'd think, well, I hope that there's some changes being made, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
and maybe there hasn't been many changes in for that space of time.
Yeah.
But if you look at how people were not looking after Chester,
Mm.
and then you look at how people are recognizing Lewis's um, state of mind and his physical condition because of those things, it
Yeah.
was good to see that his manager was like, hang on a minute, this is bigger than the sum of its parts, you know.
Yeah, because
uh,
that's so true. Like even going back to Meteora, like Chester got really sick, and
yeah,
obviously they were worried about him. But then a lot of the people on the kind of the production end of it, maybe, or well, not the production, but like the label were just like, well, we need to get this finished. We need to get this out. And he was like, okay,
yeah,
incredibly
they
sick.
weren't
And
looking after him, the band
yeah,
were,
yeah, yeah,
you know, but the machine around him wasn't.
that was it. Yeah, the industry itself was just like, well, we need to get this out. So suck it up. He can be sick after.
Yeah, get sick afterwards. Yeah,
Yeah.
we need this album.
Yeah.
So
Like
yeah,
a normal person, schedule your sickness.
yeah, of course, yeah. The pressures are all the same. You know, just
Yeah.
get on a bit, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's interesting looking at the two artists on that level, and
Mm,
it's nice to see that the outcome from that, there's resolve and prevention put in place, and
yeah.
you know, from that I really hope that he I hope that works so well for him. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I hope that stays with him. Because I
Mm.
think one of his like childhood friends is on his touring band as well. Like I think that's
Yeah,
lovely. And I know we said it before, but he does seem to be very grounded. And I thought it was really interesting the way they did have a big focus on his parents selling his childhood house, and how that was like the last part of the old him before he became Lewis Capaldi. Like,
yeah, and it was weird, and like I know because he everything he says there's some sort of there's a caveat into some sort of comedy punchline one liner.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
like where he was like going through, he just, it was so weird, he's like, yeah, this is my bedroom in there, and
yeah.
he's got like, you know, platinum selling discs on his
Yeah.
wall, and then he's like, oh, here's the Johnnies and the wrestling figures.
The two together was priceless.
As he's got like a platinum disc, and then
Yeah.
like it's just like I was dying. It's so funny. And the fact he was like, he wasn't like, oh fucking hell, Netflix are filming this documentary about it. He's
Yeah.
like, hey, look at these, like, you know,
Are they cool?
aren't they cool? Yeah, 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 dust them off or something, you
Yeah.
know, like yeah, god damn it, you know. So it was that there's some funny things in there with obviously like the serious bits in it too, but
Yeah.
yeah, you could see that maybe some people wouldn't be that affected by some of those
Mm.
that I'd say they're not simple things. You know, moving
Yeah.
house is stressful as shit, as you're aware.
Oh, of
You
course.
know,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, they say moving house is the second most stressful thing to bereavement
Oh,
in your
wow.
life. Yeah, and
That
having
makes
building work
sense.
done in your house, apparently that, and divorce, they're like the big four stresses
Right.
in life. You know, so yeah, done all those.
And you're still here.
Still here. Come on, man. Just about anyway.
Yeah.
If this was it birch fucking
Yeah,
stuff
birch
doesn't,
pollen. Yeah.
birch pollen doesn't kill me off
That's gonna
first.
be it. That's gonna be the kicker.
Yeah,
It
survived
gets
all this
it get
stuff, but
moves up the rank as well. Moving house, birch pollen.
yeah, that's totally gonna be it, isn't it? Yeah. I'll survive all this amazing stuff and then gets killed by the trees.
Yeah.
What a horrible way to go. Yeah, it's interesting that he takes that real bad, like
Mm,
not like real bad, but you can see that it affects him more than most other people would.
mm.
And I think that's a small insight into like his, how his creativity works
Yeah,
and how he writes, you know.
because it's it like anytime you like if you produce something good, you will attach a lot of sentimentality to the room or the
Mm.
space that you were in, and that will always be there. And when he was like packing up everything and he was saying, "This was where I wrote someone you loved," so yeah, and it's so simple. Like it's just his room, it's just a piano. Like it's nothing. It's not in a big studio. It wasn't. It was just very pared back, and you could just tell that it was it was a different him. And he speaks
Yeah.
as well about wanting to stay grounded and remembering who he is, and that I think with still having his childhood home and who he was when he started his road into the music industry, having that being taken away would feel like one of his main things to keep him grounded was also being taken away. But like it's hard enough when say in your 20s and your childhood home is your
Yeah.
parents decide to move and you're like, but what? No.
Yeah.
Never
Totally.
mind going from being a Joe Soap to a worldwide superstar
Oh, I can't. Yeah.
in the one house.
Yeah. Yeah. That's crazy. You know, and yeah, there's the touching moment when he said when he wrote that song and he's like, wrote that over there. And it's just his like,
His
you know,
plaque.
yeah, it's just like platinum disc, and then next to it is like over you're in the 1 billion streams club from
Yeah.
Spotify. And he's just like looking around, and it almost seems like a part of him's going, I hope this is not dying with that.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and you can see him mulling that idea though. He obviously he doesn't say it,
Yeah.
but for me, you can totally see that as he's
Saying it.
as he's saying like the comedy stuff with it, you can see that the reality of the more serious side of stuff
Yeah.
is just going over him in his head, you know.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and it was really cool that they arced back to him as a kid.
Mm, I loved that.
God, that was just one of the best bits of the documentary when you saw his journey
Yeah.
and you just thought like, man, like he's nothing but just worked his ass off.
Yeah.
It's not been, and because he's really laid back and he's funny and like a goofy character,
Yeah.
you think, oh, he's just been picked up by a major label because he got a good voice,
Yeah.
and they just lump him into these songs and away he goes. But that's just not it. Like he's a pretty decent piano player,
Mm,
and even when he was a kid, one of the things that struck me is that um, he was a really solid rhythm guitar player.
yeah. I didn't
Like,
even realize that either, but
yeah, he wasn't like weird strumming and like trying to
yeah.
compensate over his voice.
Yeah.
He was like really relaxed player,
Yeah.
solid in the pocket. And that was him at like 12,
Yeah.
you know, and it's like there's not many kids who can like shred and stuff who are
Yeah.
like that solid at playing rhythm. You
Yeah.
just think like he's
So
worked at
many artists who do are
fucking right,
professional.
Ollie. Yeah. But he was absolutely had this natural rhythm inside him where he was
Yeah.
able, you know, to play. And you just think like that's so cool that they've captured those little moments and you can see the journey through it. Um, yeah, just brilliant in that.
And it's funny because obviously he was born in 96 and like, camcorders and home videos were becoming more available to like, regular families. Like before, like say in the 80s, you have to have a fair bit of money. But
Yeah,
like it was becoming a bit more affordable. And so naturally, like you want to record everything because recording all these little moments for kids was new. And
yeah.
now like being able to cut from him on Christmas and like showing his brother and stuff like that, and
Oh
how
yeah.
it was a very like there was music in the house all the time, and then
Mm.
going to his small shows, and then obviously then it like will cut to Wembley.
Yeah, yeah. There's you know, what I took from seeing those family moments, right? Apart from something that I'm sure we'll get to in a minute in the conversation, is that there's always this thing about musicians. They need to be this um, this deeply troubled background,
Mm,
like they have to be from a broken home or
yeah,
things like that. Like if again, like if you're looking at the comparisons again, like with say Linkin Park and what have you,
yeah.
like they're all from real. It wasn't easy for where they got there. I'm not saying it was for Lewis Capaldi
Oh,
either,
of course, yeah,
but
but
he
very
had,
different childhoods.
yeah, absolutely. But it's just wonderful to see a real good family dynamic.
Yeah, And
Like,
even still, like not trying
yeah,
to cash in on his success, they're
yeah,
still very much they're honest. And it's like, well, you
yeah,
wanted our opinion before, you want it now. We're not,
yeah. Yeah,
just
like
because
they
you
played that song, and I can't remember. I don't know if it's been released yet.
yeah,
I was listening to some, and I hadn't quite recognized it yet. But it's only
yeah,
because I'm not too familiar with his back catalogue.
yeah.
But I was like, man, this song's great. And his dad goes, like, he's there, eyes closed, and he just goes, that's shaped, you know.
I thought he was being sarcastic at
I
first.
did. I thought this because like my dad says that to me too. Like he goes,
Yeah,
"Oh yeah, that's shit," and I was
yeah,
like, "Oh, if my dad says that to me, that means it's good."
yeah,
So I've
exactly.
always been like, "Okay, right, cool," like the reverse psychology of that. But
Yeah,
his dad was like, it looked like he was in the moment, like
yeah.
that, and he was just like, "Yeah, that's shite." Just
Yes.
like I,
Oh,
I wouldn't say it was shit.
yeah,
I was like, "I'll have it. I'll take the
yeah,
song if you don't want
exactly. Keeps going.
it." Yeah, hand over here, dude.
Yeah.
I'll do something with it. You know. And his mum was
And
like,
if that's the standard, like of what's regarded as shit,
yeah, totally. Like, okay, cool. Right. Yeah. Maybe it has gone to your head then because like the
yeah,
standard, you know, but that's also the great thing about it. Although I think there's one or two moments where I did think, come on, I can't remember his dad's name, but I was like, come
yeah,
on, dude, like
yeah. Mm,
unnecessary. I wonder if there was a
exactly.
little play up to the camera by saying it sometimes a bit
Yeah,
cutthroat like that. But um
because then I was getting worried. I was just like, no, the imposter syndrome.
yeah, yes, exactly. You
Like
just
when you
think,
hear that from someone you really trust, and on one side, of course, you do want the honest opinion,
mm.
but also,
It's in the delivery though.
yeah, exactly, sugarcoat it a little, and then, like, build up to the real critique.
Yeah,
Like,
the shit sandwich is what it's called, isn't it?
yeah,
You want to go
yeah,
like, okay,
exactly.
here's some
Here's what I
positive.
liked.
Here's the meat, which is probably going to be a load of shit, but
Yeah,
here's also something else to think about.
yeah,
And there's nothing wrong with delivering a shit sandwich. You know,
exactly.
it's easier to eat when it's in bread, you
Yeah.
know, type of thing. But yeah, I wonder if that was just a little bit because the cameras are there, and he probably
Yeah.
wanted to keep a bit of there was that masculinity thing happening in there. I don't know. Obviously I don't know any of the people, it's just
Yeah.
my personal take on it. But one thing I did think was funny is he he called his dad out on it.
Mm,
I think because of that reason, because
yeah.
he looked to the camera type of thing, and he goes like, you know and his mum's like, yeah, I'm not sure lyrically where you are then. He's like, all right. And then he goes, yeah, throughout my childhood, they'd say that's a good song, or, oh, that's interesting, that's different for you, or, yeah, that's not your best, but maybe you could go back and write something else for it. Now this is shit. And yeah, your verses and your lyrics aren't quite, and and he calls his parents out on that. And they're
Yeah.
like, no, well, no, we're just trying to, and he's like, you are, you know. So again, I did like the fact that even though it's his parents and they are going
Mm.
like, yeah. And I thought that song was fucking
Yeah.
was not shit.
You know.
I was thinking, I generally thought when I first saw that segment, they were going to turn around and like cry with emotion for it or
I
something.
know.
And the
Like
fact his
that's the
dad
new
turns and
thing.
goes, yeah, that's shite. It's just
Yeah.
like,
Okay. But I love that they didn't cut it weird. They let that whole thing play out.
yes,
They let this conversation between parents and their kid. Because he's only 26 now, I think. So maybe
yeah,
he's
that's mad as well.
yeah, like he's still, I'm sure, certainly to his mom, he's still her little boy. Like it
Yeah,
doesn't
of
matter.
course.
So and like you could
Yeah,
watch that dynamic kind of just parent and child happening
yeah,
live. And I thought that was so sweet. And again, very humanizing that it
yeah.
wasn't real, like they didn't kind of blow smoke up his arse or anything like that.
No,
Now they were harsh, but also like, yeah, I really liked that whole scene. And he
yeah.
was able to stand up for himself and kind of give it back.
Yeah, I think there's a parental lesson in there. I think
Hmm.
that in the right areas they've built him up to be a strong individual where he can do
Yeah.
whatever he wants. You know, um, he doesn't have to have the perfect physical health.
Yeah.
And I mean that in from my experience, especially when I was in a band and stuff, and it was all that. I was always getting told to go to the gym and
Yeah.
sort this out. And I even had a review once that called me fat in it. You know,
Oh my
yeah,
God.
yeah, I did, yeah. And they're like,
What?
yeah, I think I can't remember the whole terminology. It got
Yeah.
removed after a while, but
God.
um, yeah, they basically made a comment on the fact that I was putting on weight.
Jesus.
And I was
Like,
like, yeah, I'm going through shit. Thanks.
yeah.
Okay, wicked. But
Yeah.
with yeah, don't worry about it. I preferred you to have told me my songs were shit, but
Yeah, exactly.
whatever.
Yeah.
I could have taken that a bit better.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it's not like Men's Health are reviewing my album, right? Do you know what I
Exactly.
mean? He's fat and he's definitely losing it, but he's got some decent songs.
Yeah.
It's not like music magazines going, yeah, they were really good live, but Nicki Smash is putting
Unfortunately.
on some fucking weight. And it's like,
Yeah.
right, yeah, cool, yeah, thanks, great observation. Yeah, maybe it was just the lighting, bro.
Yeah.
It wasn't, but
Yeah.
you know, nonetheless. But it was good that he doesn't feel he needs to be anything,
Yeah.
like that. He is just who he is. Just
Yeah,
he's
exactly.
doesn't give a shit about his. I mean, it's not he doesn't give a shit. Of course he cares,
Of
but
course.
he doesn't feel like he has to be this something he's not.
Yeah.
You know, and it.
And actually, just thinking again about his mental and his like his physical health, again, another kind of moment where his parents were his parents when his dad noticed like the twitch getting worse,
Mm,
and he like softens a lot and just goes into kind of dad mode and tries to talk to
yeah.
him as a concerned parent about their kid. Like he's just like, you like, can you, is there anything you can do to, when he was saying, can you go to a chiropractor or whatever? And again, like Lewis Capaldi was a kid, like, no, there's nothing I can do. Like
He's
it,
going like, I can't fucking
yeah,
go to a fucking chiropractor. He's like,
yeah,
doesn't that's it's not the same thing,
yeah,
And then his mom's like, God, you have to be so fucking, And he's just like, I
yeah,
generally give a shit about my son here,
yeah, exactly, yeah.
And again, like they left those bits in.
Mm.
They didn't shy away from showing them. It's quite good.